Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Raj Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Amendment Bill 2011. The bill seeks to enhance the punishment for the offenders and makes provision to attach their property. To discuss the issue, I have with me Dr. Rajesh Kumar, Executive Director, Society for the Promotion of Youth and Masses, and Tripti Tandon, Advocate, Lawyers Collective. Now for the headlines. The bill seeks to insert provisions attaching property of drug peddlers even if the property has not been acquired by drug money. The bill enhances the penalty for offences committed for the second time. A person's term of imprisonment shall be extended to 1.5 times the term he can be convicted for. The Standing Committee on Finance recommends making death penalty one of the options for the court. Says amend section to read may be punishable with death in place of shall be punishable with death. The Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Amendment Bill 2011 seeks to insert provisions to attach the property of drug peddlers even if the property has not been acquired by drug money. The bill also includes several changes that will deter drug abusers.
The International Narcotics Control Board has identified India as the leading country of origin for drug substances, accounting for 58% of the substances seized all over the globe. The existing narcotics, drug and psychotropic substance law prohibits cultivation, production, and any other kind of handling of narcotics. Now the government proposes to strengthen this law.
It does not seem logical where you want criminalization of consumption as best as a deterrent. You do not want to arrest 20% of the college kids who have experimented with drugs, etc. What is the consequence for their lives? Instead of giving them a future, we are giving them only one option, which is crime.
The bill has proposed provisions for forfeiture of property related to illicit trade in drugs and psychotropic substances. It expands the definition of illegally acquired property to include not just property derived from drug income, but also equivalent value of such property whose source cannot be proved. The definition includes properties of relatives and associates of drug traffickers.
All the laws and policies regarding drug abuse are necessary and fine. However, we must all realize that it will not be possible for any society to address the problem of narcotic and illicit drugs just by relying on legal or law enforcement measures. All laws and policies should have at their core the health and human right aspects related to drug use.
The Narcotic, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985 has been amended twice earlier to align domestic laws with global conventions. But as more anomalies surfaced, the NDPS Amendment Bill 2011 was introduced to tighten the provisions of the Act. Parliamentary Standing Committee recommended that mandatory death penalty under NDPS Act is unconstitutional and it should be applied only to the rarest of the rare cases. With camera person Amit, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Standing Committee has also recommended enabling compounding of unintended or inadvertent non-compliances or procedural lapses to address undue harassment faced by legally authorized manufacturers, dealers, traders and handlers. My question to you, Tripti, is, do you think what the Standing Committee has recommended, as far as compounding the entire, certain portions, so that people who get caught by not following procedures or by not following the law as prescribed or not proper knowledge of the entire law also get into the same trap, and once they get in, there's no rescue for them? Is that the right way to go?
Actually, the committee's recommendations on this front are not very clear from the report, but it appears that this was made on the basis of a submission they received from pharmaceutical manufacturers and industry people who felt that the law is extremely harsh, and even when the intention is not to traffic and maybe some inadvertent lapses because of ignorance of law or otherwise, their staff or their managers etc. get caught. So I think the concern was that the law should not be so harsh as to criminalize people who are not intending to traffic, or it's just a maybe like a procedural lapse. And I think there's merit to what the committee has said, but like I said, it's not very clear what exactly is their recommendation.
Is there something known as not intending to do anything on as far as the drug scenario in this country is concerned? Dr. Rajesh, is there a possibility of someone getting into that or qualifying for the parameter of not intending to do a procedural lapse or violate the law? Is there anything of that kind as far as the drug space is concerned?
I'm not sure it is possible, because you see now the pharmaceutical drugs and the drug use and illicit drugs, these are two different things. And sometimes pharmaceutical drugs are very different, from the user's perspective and from the supplier's perspective than the, the drug intended for the trafficking and misuse and abuse at the street level. So, these are two different things, and I think what committee has done is a good job.
So, things like just bringing it down to the basic level of user, especially products like Fencidil and Benadryl, handling of them and the restrictions imposed on them, does this entire thing of not intending to qualify for this kind of a exemption?
Actually, intention is absolutely necessary. The NDPS Act has been enacted on the basis of 3 international conventions, which make it very clear that all these activities, say possession, manufacture, cultivation, use, etc., should be punishable only if it is intentional. So, the fact that somebody plants drugs on me and I had no intention, no knowledge, I certainly cannot be criminalized for that. So, similarly, if I'm not intending to sell it in the illicit market, my intention is to use it for illicit pharmaceutical manufacture and use, and due to some, ignorance or inadvertence or somebody else's fault, I certainly cannot be criminalized. I think this is a very legitimate concern that the committee has raised.
Okay, we'll move on to the next thing. The point that one of our experts made was arrest college-going kids, which essentially means they are the ones who actually, out of experiment or inquisitiveness, intrigue or whatever, they are caught trying these things. Now, a small quantity will now be defined according to the existing amendments, which will include, so if a drug is caught with glucose or other things, it will also be included as drug, which will increase the chances of his punishment and the number of years behind bars. Do you think that's the way to go?
No, it should not be. See, one thing is very clear. We should not criminalize young drug user or any drug user per se. That is very important. Number 2, we understand at the street level what police does. Now, who knows? Tomorrow I might be caught, like with very, very small quantity, and then X amount of glucose could be mixed, and then tomorrow I will be produced in the court, and the court has no option, because this amendment has to be understood that number 1, we must decriminalize the users. See, the users might be victim of a particular situation, and that has to be appreciated by not only by the by the law but the country as a whole. Because neither we have capacity or nor we can assume that, suppose we have 10 lakhs users in the country, can we put all these 10 lakhs users in the jail? We can't. So we should create an atmosphere where the drug users could be sent for the treatment, could be provided various options, but they should not be criminalized that once they are in jail for whole life, they will carry this stigma. Employment opportunities will be in trouble. The family relations with other, because India is a very strong family bond.
So the point you're trying to make is that it should have a health-oriented and a human right face should
Absolutely
be
right.
at the core, at the point one of the doctors from
Absolutely
AIMS was
right.
making. But in order to do that, what else needs to be done with the law as we have it?
One is that the provisions for treatment and education and support for drug users have to be enhanced, and we welcome what the government has tried to do by inserting the term management of drug dependence as opposed to mere abstinence and forcing people to quit drugs, because we understand that it's not very easy. Once you are addicted, it takes certain medical intervention, certain psychological, social support for a person to come out of or reduce or lessen the drug intake. So I think in that aspect what the bill seeks to do is to ensure that drug management is also addressed, not just drug abstinence is a very good thing. But apart from that, I think there could have been more importance accorded to drug treatment, because right now what is happening is there are hardly any government facilities where people can seek treatment for drug dependence. And because the rates of addiction are increasing, we know from the northeast, we know from Punjab that almost 30% of the population is addicted. So in the absence of facilities where people can go for proper treatment, you have these fly-by-night centers operating. People just suddenly open one Nasha Mukti Kendra, all sorts of, there's no treatment, there's nothing. In fact, they're beaten, they're tortured, they're made to do forced labor, and we've had deaths resulting from such centers. So the government should cover this.
Yeah, I get it. On that note, it's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will talk about the revisions in the penal provisions. Welcome back. The Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Amendment Bill 2011 enhances the penalty for offences committed for the second time. A person's term of imprisonment shall be extended to 1.5 times the term provided by law if he repeats the offence. Similar increase has also been proposed for fines.
The existing law prohibits any person from possessing or transferring any property derived from drug peddling. The amendment provisions now introduces penalty for such an offence with rigorous imprisonment between 3 to 10 years and a fine.
Pending bill which is in the parliament for increasing the punishment of 6 months to 1 year, in my view it is not going to serve any purpose, because the criminals will not have that much sufficient time where he can reform that. Rather, government should think of increasing the punishment more than even 1 year also, because by this once, and a number of places we have seen, particularly in the jails, where the rehabilitation centers are working nicely, psychologists are working nicely, they have brainwashed the criminals and they have come out of the jail as a normal citizen.
The bill provides punishment for consumption of morphine, cocaine and heroin. The existing law lays out a maximum punishment of 1 year, while trafficking of small quantities of the same attracts maximum punishment of 6 months only. This anomaly is proposed to be rectified by reducing the maximum punishment for consumption of drugs to 6 months. Under the NDPS Act, small quantity attracts 6 months rigorous punishment or fine up to 10,000 or both. Small quantity less than commercial quantity attracts punishment up to 10 years of rigorous punishment and fine up to 1 lakh rupees. Commercial quantity will attract rigorous punishment of 10 years to 20 years and a fine of 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees. According to the amendment, the specified amount can be in terms of pure drug content or otherwise. So now, the entire quantity of drug seized can be taken into account while determining the punishment.
Actually, the quantities themselves are not going to be changed, but they are changing the interpretation of quantity. So earlier it said that the, let us say, adjudications of penalty will be given on the content of pure drug, which is seized. Now they are saying that whatever is seized, if it is even as it might have 10% heroin and 90% glucose or anything else mixed, that the charge will be made for a full 1 kilo.
The Narcotics, Drug and Psychotropic Substances Amendment Bill 2011 transfers the power of regulatory poppy production from the state governments to the central government. Now the central government may permit and regulate activities related to production and sale of specified type of poppy. The major flaw of the NDPS amendment bill is that now all the low drug users will come under the same category of high drug users. With camera person Amit, Aruna Thakur, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Standing Committee feels that the relevant clauses be amended to spell out in clear terms and measure the difference of small quantity and commercial quantity. Dr. Rajesh, do you think what the Standing Committee has pointed out relating to small and commercial needs to be spelled out more clearly? And if it is spelled out, how is it going to help?
So it is going to impact in a very big way. The reason is, small quantity means always for the user. Now, if the user perceive that what is a small quantity, it could be a quarter gram, it could be 1 gram, it could be 5 grams. And they are not intending for the international, the crime at the national or international level. So I think the small quantity should be defined in a way that consumer should not be harassed. Consumer means user. And we should certainly focus on the people, those who are actually trafficking and creating law and order problem, narco-terrorism, all those people should be certainly attacked and they should be brought to the justice. But the people, those who are at the street level, should not be punished.
Ma'am, the point that I want reaction from you is the rehabilitation aspect, completely ignored. What needs to be done to ensure that the law provides for that?
Well, actually, rehabilitation essentially means that you encourage the person to
come out of it.
Or reduce
Get
the
into
problems
normal,
associated with it and get back to everyday living with family, friends, education, employment, etc. So while the Act does provide for rehabilitation, it is preceded by criminalization. So I am first sent to jail, I spend 6 months, 1 year in jail, and then one seeks to rehabilitate me. Now you fail to look into the fact that a jail sentence stays with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And in jail, the likelihood that I will come into contact with hardened criminals, other offenders, and I will likely to get entrenched in a life of crime rather than be able to get out of it. So I think if we are really serious about rehabilitation, then we need to think outside the box and we need to discard the jail and criminalization model, especially for drug users or people involved in small quantity or petty offences.
The Standing Committee has said that this, what the government has done in its amendment is reduced it to 6 months for for consumers. Earlier it was 1 year for the consumer and 6 months for the peddler. Yes. So now they have kind of brought it down and made it equal to 6 months. So both the peddler and the consumer now will get 6 months jail. What the Standing Committee has said is, why are you decreasing it? Why don't you increase it to 1 year and make the consumer go to jail for 1 year and also the peddler goes to jail for 1 year? Do you find sense in that?
See, if you ask me, since we are working with a drug user for quite some time, we should not give any punishment to the drug user. I give you a simple example. SPOM is running a center for children. Now, children, those who are just 10, 11, 12. Now, who gave them drug? It is the society gave them drug. The family was not aware about the whole process. Now, this child who is just 12 years or 13 years using drug, do you think that we should give him a 6 months punishment as per the NDPS Act? We should not. So, we must understand those who are earning money by selling drug, you have every right to punish them. But those who are user at the street level because of ignorance, now tell me how many schools have a program on drug education? Very few. So these are the issues for the drug users. First, we need to prevent, number one. Number two, those who are on drug use, they should be given various options for the treatment, and those who are out from the drug should be sent for various other educational options, like if they have missed their school, like a 12-year child who has been using drug for 2-3 years must be out from the school. So these are the options should be provided even under the law. because then it is mandated for a school to ensure that if the awareness program is there, if someone is on drug.
Everything is there and can be taken into account. On that note, it's time for us to head into a break. When we come back, we will show you an interview with Senior Advocate Anand Grover. Welcome back. My colleague Aruna Thakur spoke to Anand Grover, Senior Advocate, and tried to understand the implication of the amendment.
Since the inception of the Act, it has been amended twice. So what is the basic reason for the third proposed amendment of this bill?
Well, the reasons that have been given by the government and the Narcotics Control Bureau is that as the implementation was undertaken of the Act, after the second amendment, there have been certain anomalies and they wanted to rectify them. And there are certain judgments which have come and they wanted to address those things.
There is a change in the definition of small quantity and commercial quantity of drugs. So what is the significance of the proposed definition?
Well, there have been judgments including the Supreme Court, where the question has arisen when you talk of a preparation. Suppose a drug like heroin or diacetylmorphine or cocaine, if it's in a preparation, right, that means there are other things with it, not other narcotics and psychotropic substances. Suppose it's mixed with water, or when there's a pharmaceutical drug, there are excipients, other things that are used. What is the quantity of the drug? Is it just that pure drug content or the full preparation? So what they want is to make it clear that with the total preparation. So that is the amendment. Now that actually creates a huge problem. Suppose I only have 1 gram of heroin, diacetylmorphine or whatever, in a solution of 10 milliliters of water. So what is my drug? It's 10 milliliters. Is it commercial or is it small quantity? So accordingly it will be figured, but it actually causes huge hardship if you have a very small quantity of drug in a very large preparation.
Will the proposed amendment is going to stop the drug trafficking, which is its aim?
You see, there are a series of amendments. There are amendments, as you said, about the quantity. There is an amendment on consumption. For example, under section 27, consumption of certain drugs like heroin, if the person is found in possession of that, then he or she is given imprisonment and found guilty of 1 year. But if it's other drugs, then only 6 months. Now, one of the major changes that was brought out in the second amendment was that drug users were dependent. Dependent means like if I'm taking alcohol and I cannot do without it, I get withdrawal symptoms, then I'm dependent. That is a medically treatable condition. So instead of imprisoning them and convicting them and sentencing them into imprisonment, we had suggested that this should be done away with because these people need medical help. Instead of that, the proposal is that even the 6 months drugs conviction should be now turned into 1 year, which we think is completely wrong. So if you look at it only from that point of view, you are encouraging. Why is drug trafficking going on? It is because of criminalization.
Legitimate use of medical use of drugs legitimately, that is creating a problem because now, because of the NDPS Act, we don't have drugs like morphine which are medically required available in the market. Tripti, what is it, what should be done to ensure that legitimate use of drugs, medical drugs, are made available?
Actually, the purpose of the NDPS Act as well as the conventions on which it is founded is to ensure that drugs are not misused but at the same time available for legitimate use. So for instance, morphine or several other opioids are essential medicines for pain relief, for other palliative purposes. In fact, India's national essential list of medicines contains morphine, contains codeine, which are narcotics under the NDPS Act. Now, because of the severe restrictions in terms of punishment, in terms of licensing from multiple authorities and all of that, these drugs are not available for patients. So if you look at cancer patients, many of them are suffering needlessly with pain because cheap pain relievers like morphine are not available. The law is so stringent that doctors, pharmacists, everyone is scared
What needs to be done to correct
prescribe.
that?
I think there are a need for amendments in the Act. There is a need for the central government to take over, because right now morphine control is under state governments,
yes.
and each state has its own system of licensing and all of that.
There's been an
so this
attempt
needs to be simplified and taken over by the central government.
Amendment have been made giving more power to the center. Do you think that suffices?
That is only with respect to poppy straw, which is purely for commercial purposes. Health purposes have not been taken into account.
Dr. Rajesh, the question that the point that you're making about responsibility of drug use and the way forward.
See, now since we have a right to education, and we presume that in next 5 years' time, most of our children will be in school. So the basic responsibility of the school about education, awareness, engagement of these young people, because prevention is very important, and we need to close the floodgate to the young. See, large number of
what you're pointing out is education from school level itself, and it should be made part of the curriculum.
Yeah. And the engagement of family, because it is the family, by the time they know that my child is on drug, it's too late. So these are the two important aspects which should be, I don't know whether it's part of...
How it can be included. On the death penalty bit, one last quickly, time is running out. Death penalty, what is the status? The Standing Committee has recommended that it be made an option. As of now, the NDPS Act says that death penalty is the final. So,
well, the Standing Committee has gone so far to say the death penalty should be optional. We believe the death penalty should be abolished in its entirety. Let's remember, drug crimes are economic offences. They entail maybe earning profit. They do not entail killing. There is no intention to kill. And internationally, as well as under our constitution, death penalty is for the most serious.
But the resultant is death, ma'am. But the resultant is death.
If you ask me, tobacco kills more people than does cannabis. We don't prescribe death penalty, not even punishment. Cannabis,
that's all we have time
death.
for. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our shows on the YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.